Okay, well, welcome to the Center for the Study of Higher Education's webinar on challenges and opportunities for private colleges and universities, online programs and partnerships. I'm Jim Hyatt, and I will be the moderator for this session. I'm currently serving as the Vice President and Chief Financial Officer for EDUCAUSE. EDUCAUSE is a nonprofit association whose mission is to advance higher education through the use of information technology. I'm also a Senior Research Associate at the Center for the Study of Higher Education, and I'm Vice Chancellor and CFO Emeritus at the University of California at Berkeley. For the last several years, I've worked with public-private colleges and universities to strengthen their financial position and deal with the challenges not only of COVID-19 pandemic, but to capitalize on future opportunities. According to Moody's Investor Services, closures among four-year public and private not-for-profit colleges averaged 5 per year from 2004 to 2014, while mergers averaged 2 or 3 per year. Moody's also predicted that the closure rate out of 2,300 institutions would triple by 2017, and the merger rate would double. Among the challenges currently faced by colleges and universities are changing student demographics and competition from for-profit and other non-traditional higher education institutions. Opportunities include leveraging existing programs by offering online programs and a more diverse array of degree and certificate programs targeted at meeting the changing workforce needs of an evolving market. Dealing with these challenges and capitalizing on potential opportunities have largely focused on two major initiatives: mergers or partnerships with other institutions and increased offerings of both traditional and non-traditional degree and course offerings. In the state of California, we've seen several mergers and partnerships that include the San Francisco Art Institute, in which the University of San Francisco signed a letter of intent with the institute that called for the Jesuit University to acquire the Fine Arts School's assets and integrate its undergraduate and graduate programs. Under the plan, after a period of due diligence, the Art Institute would become the San Francisco Art Institute at the University of San Francisco. The two sides expect the review to be finished by the summer of 2022 in time for integrated programs to launch in the fall. Another school in our area, Mills College, the governing board of Mills College approved an agreement in September for the 169-year-old liberal arts school to be acquired by the Boston-based Northeastern University. The deal means Mills will cease operating as a women's institution whose numbers have shrunk in the US over time. Mills students who complete their degrees before the end of June of 2022 will receive a diploma from the college. Those who complete their studies after that date will earn a degree from Mills College at Northeastern University. And finally, in the southern part of the state, Marymount California University, St. Leo University in Florida will acquire Marymount, California, and turn it into St. Leo's Los Angeles campus in a deal between two Roman Catholic universities. St. Leo will take on $3.7 million of Marymount's debt, and St. Leo's president told the Tampa Bay Times that the California campus is valued at about $60 million, significantly more than the debt. Another initiative that has been employed to address the challenges faced by colleges and universities has been the expansion of online degree and program offerings. Although accelerated by the pandemic, this initiative has also been driven by the needs of students and the demand from corporate and private sector employers. A significant number of students, college students, for example, choose to enroll in online or distant education, never having to attend face-to-face classes. These students are comfortable communicating through technology and managing their learning without having to show up at a particular place and time. These students are also often older with careers and families and want more control over their lives and education. Almost half, 48% of online and remote students were motivated by career and employment goals to enroll in their programs. The National Center for Education Statistics integrated post-secondary education data system indicated that in the fall of 2018, more than 6.9 million students, or 35.3% of students in the nation, were enrolled in distance education courses at degree-granting post-secondary institutions. Examples of online programs in higher education include the following: Southern New Hampshire University, a private nonprofit New England Association of Schools and Colleges accredited university, offers multi-term start dates throughout the year, provides 24/7 online classroom access, and over 200 online degree programs. St. Leo University, which we referred to earlier, is originally accredited with a long Catholic heritage. It is ranked by US News and World Report among the best value schools, best colleges for veterans, and best online bachelor's program. St. Leo's offers 6 available start dates throughout the year, small class sizes that allow students to receive personalized attention from instructors. Another school, which is a public institution, Purdue University Global, is a 4-year public university located in Indianapolis, Indiana. It was established in 2018. It's part of the Purdue University system with key services provided by Kaplan Inc. It offers more than 175 programs at associate, bachelor's, master's, and doctoral levels, the ability to apply eligible work experience and prior college credits toward up to 75% of a student's undergraduate degree program. And finally, Union Institute University, which we'll hear from too, they're both the president and provost, is the #1 adult-focused and diverse nonprofit university in Ohio. It offers bachelor's, master's, doctoral degrees, and certificates in education, leadership, social justice, mental wellness, public service, healthcare, and more. Classes are 100% online, learn anywhere, anytime, and students can attend part or full time. Today, we have 3 panel members who can provide firsthand experience regarding both online programs and college and university partnerships and mergers. Dr. Karen Webb, Dr. Karen Schuster Webb is the president of Union Institute University and founder of the Institute of Social Justice at Union Institute University. She's a visionary leader, internationally respected scholar, and a member of the American Council on Education's Board of Directors. She has dedicated her career to equity of access to educational excellence. Joining Dr. Webb is Dr. Nelson Soto. He's the Provost, Academic Vice President, Union Institute and University. Dr. Soto has over 7 years at a not-for-profit tuition-dependent institution. He's been largely engaged in developing new partnerships between Union and other colleges and universities, and is a well-funded and well-respected researcher as well. Finally, Dr. Bill Nelson is a senior consultant and alternative futures practice leader at the registry. Dr. Nelson is the former vice president and academic dean of St. Olaf College in Minnesota, president of Augusta University in South Dakota, and Dr. Nielsen has been involved in the successful establishment of partnerships or federations between several small colleges and universities. I'm going to ask Dr. Webb and Dr. Soto to begin the discussion, and then we'll be followed by Dr. Nielsen. Okay, Dr. Webb.
Thank you for the kind introduction, Dr. Hyatt, and it's a pleasure to be a part of this panel. You know, I've often said that challenge for me is opportunity, but I think like many institutions, we have received more opportunity post-pandemic than any of us expected. That's certainly true at Union. And as it was said before, Union Institute and University primarily serves adults who've had the courage and determination to return to complete a university degree, continue their love of learning, explore a new career, or to enhance their current credentials. For us, our students are not non-traditional. They are Union's tradition, and they have been our primary focus since Union's founding in 1964, when Union made a commitment to engage adult learners, to enlighten with lifelong learning, and to empower the cause of social justice. Another significant factor in Union's ability to adapt to change in higher education is that collaboration and forming partnerships are part of our DNA. You see, Union was founded as part of a consortium of 10 institutions, including Goddard College, Antioch College, Bard College, Hofstra University, Sarah Lawrence College, and Stevens College. The consortium name was the Union for Research and Experimentation in Higher Education. And Union later became its University Without Walls, then the Union Institute, and today we are Union Institute and University, with the addition of the Institute for Social Justice in 2018, bringing voice to the name institution, and continuing our social justice legacy. Union is a nonprofit, as mentioned. We are accredited by the Higher Learning Commission, and we have offerings from micro-credentials to doctoral programs, and we are the only Hispanic serving institution in the state of Ohio. Our busy students' needs made Union an early adopter of evening and weekend classes offered at commuter campuses. Today, our students prefer the flexibility of online and low residency programs that speak to them from college to career. We have made a significant investment in technology to better deliver our programs and to provide a robust continuing education platform, which gave us a blueprint to follow during the pandemic, with faculty and staff already prepared through our Center for Teaching and Learning. In addition, Union is a university system with locations in California, Florida, and with the flagship location in Cincinnati. Although primarily online, Union shares many of the same challenges as traditional site-based institutions indicated by the National Center for Education Statistics. We look to grow. We look at budgets, changing demographics, student services, academic needs, a shrinking workforce, as well as the acute need to address mental health and community well-being. We do so from a team approach. We are also challenged to look at capability in relation to capacity and how to not only survive, but to become a sustainable, resilient university because, as we like to say, the world eats Union. With input from our university community, our board of trustees, faculty, staff, students, partners, we are taking the following steps to resiliency building. We are growing new educational business through an entrepreneurial business model. We are aligning budget modeling with program delivery. We are evaluating enrollment goals, programs, and processes, and restructuring when needed. Accepting organizational and physical change, we recently sold our commuter campus of over 30 years. We are now more visible to the public and more accessible to our students. We are utilizing our online platform to enhance communication and visibility. We now have a podcast. We do online town halls, and we have a robust platform for continuing education called ETSA, Education Transformation for Strategic Alliances. We are engaging in foresight action planning for visibility, growth, delivery, and value as our strategic plan entails. We are seeking innovative program offerings, and we are collaborating with community agencies, corporations, and sister institutions. Dr. Soto will provide more detail on our collaborations, but I think it's well to note and important for institutions to ask as you contemplate involving yourself with partnerships and collaborations. Why are you considering the collaboration? Do the potential partners' missions and strategic directions align with yours? What is the likely impact on student success and academic integrity? What is the necessary investment in time, focus, commitment, and money? And does the institution understand the level of risk? Dr. Soto.
Thank you, President Webb. So under Dr. Webb's leadership in 2018, Union came to the understanding that we could no longer stay status quo. That is, in order to continue to thrive, we had to look at, revisit our modeling, our business model. In reinventing that business model, we looked at where can we cut costs, grow revenue, and continue to demonstrate unions' prominence in the United States and throughout the world, and also provide solutions to issues and concerns. So we looked at first procurements. Looking at procurements, part of our process is that we were very insular in what we purchased and who we partnered with and some of our business practices. Right down the street from us, we had organizations such as the Association for Independent Colleges and Universities of Ohio. Through this relationship through AICUO, we were able to save on expenditures, joint travel agreements, other state agreements that union qualify for, even though we were a nonprofit organization. Through this agreement, we were able to make connections, tuition revenue connections, such as looking at opportunities with other institutions to provide transfer agreements. Other areas that we were able to engage was even in our own backyard, GC3, the Greater Cincinnati Consortium for Colleges and Universities, where we were part of a sisterhood of 15 other institutions locally, and where we were able to accept transfer agreements, allow students to cross-register, but more so, this gave us an opportunity to re-engage with our community as an online institution that had the right to exist and to provide academic programs where other institutions weren't able to provide those programs for their students. We looked at shared services, looking at our technology. As Dr. Webb mentioned, we invested heavily in our learning management system and other platforms. We've created business models for these shared services along with institutions outside the country. Let me give you a couple examples. So there was an organization that was recently housed at a different university, and that university had changed their overall mission, and just this organization was not the right fit. This organization looked towards union to be that solution, and we were able to welcome this organization to our portfolio, and now they're thriving within union, and we're providing shared services, back office support for this organization. Again, we had to make sure that we were providing opportunities to garner these relationships. One of our major partners is actually the Department of Education. As a Hispanic serving institution, we were able to partner with other organizations and other entities, nonprofit entities that are looking at working with HSIs, Hispanic serving institutions, and partnering with them so that we could deliver individuals that are interested in application and programs that are most likely not offered at other institutions. We've also entered into agreement with the United States Department of Education and in other areas in terms of partnership for the prison pipeline. Again, these were programs and activities to support those who are returning citizens that are looking at opportunities to continue their education. We've also forged partnerships with those that are in the corporate space. Those individuals that are looking at training and other certification and credential opportunities that normally wouldn't be able to be offered in-house in that organization. We were able to do that through our ETSA platform. And then finally, the institution as a whole has gone international, working with international institutions and universities that are looking at US partnerships for their students to continue their graduate level work and other credentials. We're now in Africa and also in Jamaica. But let me share with you what we've learned along the ways through this process of procuring academic shared services. First thing, of course, make sure your board knows what you're doing. Inform your board, because there are also leaders within the business industry or other organizations that could see connections. And that's what we did. We were able to leverage our board, and they were able to provide connections for us. Other lessons learned is that we had to inform our local leadership team, the academic team, so that they would understand where are those touch points and how will this impact their area for the positive. And then finally, we were just transparent, clear communication. Why are we doing these relationships, and how does that have impact on our revenue and also allow us to cut costs where appropriate? Next slide, please. Dr. Webb, do you want to share a little bit about the operational assessment we went through?
Yes, so we looked internally first at our operations. We looked at each of the areas that are delineated here on this slide, and then we also went to an outside consulting firm to see if we were on the right track. We were affirmed in terms of looking at centralizing our organizational structure for growth, for enrollment, financials, marketing, et cetera. We were at one point 4 distinct locations with 4 of everything, 4 registrars, 4 marketing personnel. So this has been centralized, streamlined, and we are tailoring our marketing to the needs of our students. We are creating programs that are market responsive. We are looking to partner also with our, not only our financial team, but we have a finance committee of our board of trustees, and we are using this in partnership as we go forth in terms of our financials. But overall, we went from individual, almost self-contained 4 institutions to one, as is our accreditation as a system.
So overall, within this operational assessment, we also use this structure to evaluate partnerships and relationships with other organizations. And what we've noticed is that so long as they're in alignment with mission and that there's clear communication about what is the plan for growth, what are those infrastructures that we need to consider, and other areas that we need to take in consideration, we use this model too to make sure that we have those clear conversations as we think about partnerships and even long-term potential other organizational efficiencies throughout the country with other sister institutions throughout the country and throughout the world. Thank you.
Great. That was very helpful. Now let's turn to Dr. Nelson.
Yes, first of all, welcome to all of you who are watching and listening to this important webinar. I've looked at the list of people who signed up for it, and I'm impressed that there are people from a variety of institutions, but quite a few who've been connected with private institutions or sometimes public institutions who might have gone through the following kind of scenario. You hear from your CFO that you need more revenue, and you've got to find some new income ideas. You hear from your enrollment vice president who says, well, we're really struggling to find the students to bring to this institution or get connected with the institution. And finally, of course, it gets to the board members, and board members begin to discuss. And then you hear that word that appears, well, should we consider a merger? And where should we start to look at that particular merger idea? But I would say to all of you, wait, because there are alternatives, including very important and much more effective alternatives to going the merger route. You need to find new ways to bring together yourself and your assets with others and be able to save your name, to save your alumni connection, to save your endowment, and indeed to keep on your particular mission that you care about and want to maintain. So I'd like to first begin to look at some of these alternatives. Let's turn to that first slide. What are the types of what we would call mutual growth federations and partnerships? And these partnerships can include a wide variety of different ideas. They can include program sharing and facility sharing and joint purchasing. You've already heard about that a little bit from our folks at Union and kinds of things that they've partnered with. Consortium arrangements. Consortium arrangements have been around for a long, long time. I remember when I served with a major foundation a number of years ago, we brought together the first major conference of the consortia in this country, and quite a few of those are still existing. And then you can look at alliances of differing kinds. For example, I've been involved in recent years with the registry, either as a senior consultant and the one in charge of looking at alternative futures for colleges, or as an interim president at an institution going through a partnership development. We've looked at and helped in the registry a number of different situations, including alliances between institutions. For example, and I know that they don't mind my mentioning this, we've worked with Iowa Wesleyan University, which was really facing closure. They're located in southeastern Iowa. They looked at different partnerships. We gave them advice on how to go through the partnership process. They finally decided on a partnership with a public institution, in this case, the Southeastern Iowa Community College. And they have formed now a fascinating alliance. They have wonderful articulation agreements. Both institutions have been able to increase enrollment because of the partnership and the marketing that they do jointly. And they've created what they call the Southeast Iowa Higher Education Alliance and have brought together people from their board members and staff to help with all the coordinating efforts. So that's, again, a different kind of model. There have been affiliation agreements with significant independents that have been occurring along the way. Again, short of a merger, but very formal legal affiliation agreements. And at the end, I'm going to tell you about one that I was directly involved in and tell you what we went through. There are affiliation agreements with strong governance oversight so that you still keep your independence, but you give up a little bit of what you want to do jointly through governance oversight. And there are all kinds of federations that are coming about with increased joint governance responsibilities. So let's look then at the next issue as how you begin the development process. This is very important. It's important to look at going through a very careful kind of process so you get the best out of that process for your institution and for the partner or partners who might enter in as well. We've found in our work with the registry that it's important to get, obviously, the board deeply involved from the very beginning. And ones we've worked with might appoint something like a new directions team, or call it what you want, by the board to begin that process. It's important then to prepare a careful list of your assets. Often you don't realize all the assets that you have in an institution. I'm not just talking about financial assets or buildings and that kind of thing, but all your program assets, your faculty, the kind of staff that you have, others that are important part of your total assets. Write them down. Have a preparation of those lists that you can share in the partnership development process. And then you begin to develop a list of partners that would be based on the needs and mutual strengths that you're seeking. That could be just one or two partners if they're close by and you know the kind of natural affinity you might have, or it could be a larger list. We've worked with, in the registry, with institutions that started with as many as 100 possibilities out there for partnerships, down to say 10 or 15 that they wanted to get very serious about. It's important to then set a desired timeline for the process so you keep people on track, including yourself on track, to reach the goal that you're aiming for. And then you develop a request for proposals document, outlining your assets, outlining the kind of thing that you want to pursue, what your needs are, and asking for how that particular partnership could be developed, not just by you, but what are the needs that another institution are seeking to meet, and how you can come together in a very positive way in that regard. And then, of course, you evaluate those proposals carefully. In one institution, we looked at maybe 15 proposals, narrowed it down to 3 for follow-up, full visitations at those institutions before deciding on that particular partner along the way. So that's the basic process that you would go through. Let's turn to the next slide and look at what are the advantages of all these different ideas that are actually short of an affiliation or an alliance agreement. And you'll see that if you do it correctly, you'll develop a good number of substantial joint efficiencies along the way. You try to combine your strengths. In other words, you do not want to look at a partnership that does not bring strength together with strength. In one of the partnerships we worked with, we made sure that they were saying to themselves, we don't want to have weak come together with weak. because that may end up in something weaker as opposed to developing the strengths you need. Economies of scale, you've already heard about that from our friends at Union in different ways, of the way in which you bring together with 2 or 3 or more institutions, all kinds of economies of scale. You can offer new academic opportunities to reach out into the market and to whole new ways to respond to the needs of the society, respond to needs of corporations and nonprofits and other institutions. You can do that better jointly than you could on your own. But the great thing about the advantage here is that you preserve your institutional identity. You don't lose your mission. You can keep that mission. You don't lose your actual logos, if you will, your identities that come through all kinds of student activities that you've had, particularly institutions that are not just all online, but are there on an institutional in an institutional setting. You keep all those identities that are so important to you and to your alumni and to others. Also extremely important is you control your endowed resources. We've helped to oversee the coming together of institutions where they've not had to give up their endowment, and they can find ways to maybe even jointly manage some of those with another institution, but they keep their own endowment and their oversight of that endowment and control of it. And then you can maintain your alumni and development constituencies. Get involved in a merger, that's extremely hard to do. But with an affiliation agreement or these other partnerships, that makes that all possible. And then finally, you maintain essential sovereignty and your board control. Those are great, great advantages. I'll close just by mentioning a couple of examples that came out of one institutional partnership that I was personally a part of, serving for 2 years as the interim president, in this case, not of a college university, but of a seminary, namely Episcopal Divinity School in Cambridge, Massachusetts, and over a 2-year period of time helped to engineer an affiliation agreement, all the legalities involved in that with Union Theological Seminary in New York. Now you might say seminaries, that's different. Not really. We've discovered that all the issues are basically still the same when you're bringing institutional assets and mission and alumni and all those things together. We worked over those 2 years to form, going through that process that I basically mentioned to you. I had 10 proposals that came back as substantive ones. We ended up with 3 institutions. We spent 2 full days on each of the institutions and finally decided on Union Theological Seminary as our partner. And then over a number of months, we looked carefully at how we could develop an affiliation agreement, got the boards and staff members deeply involved, and of course the lawyers as well involved in doing that, took the proposals back to our boards that met basically about the same time, and then began to hammer out all the transition agreements that were important. After the 2 boards decided that they did want to form an affiliation agreement, they gave to me and the president of the other institution 1 month to come up with a transition plan, which we did, and then spent the next year carrying out all those plans for transition. And if you have questions in that regard, be glad to answer those and give you ways to be in touch with me if you want even more details. So that gives you an idea of the alternatives that are out there. Alternatives, meaning that you can do exciting things without having to go to merger and preserve so much of what you want to keep in your individual institution. That, I think, is all that I need to say at this point. So I'll turn it back to Jim so we can handle a number of questions.
Thank you, Dr. Nielsen. That was very helpful, very informative. Okay, we did ask people if they had questions related to this topic, and we've got a number of questions. So the first one is, this is addressed to the panelists, what resources have you found to help with partnerships?
One of the approaches that we've taken is to look at the actual organizations of which we are part of. There is an organization here that brings together the presidents of all of the private and independent institutions. There is another organization that brings together presidents, public and private, from both types of institutions in Southwest Ohio. Then between the two of them, that helps to give you leverage and procurement for partnerships, and you get to know the other institutions and more about them. So that gives you within your own geographical area. And then you look at national, like the American Council on Education, or other state, ask you other state related or private related. And then of course, also looking at content specialty organizations. So that's a place to start in terms of lists, in terms of getting to know those institutions and their leadership within your area. And then, of course, you look at mission alignment. I don't know, Dr. Soto, do you have some other?
No, I think also sometimes we forget about our accreditation bodies.
Yeah.
Talking to, for example, we're part of the Higher Learning Commission, and talking to your liaison, let them know in some aspect, casual conversations of what you're interested in doing. They may know of other institutions that are thinking the same way, and they may be a connector for you. So that's been helpful in our case, to just have casual chats with your liaison officer.
I think also knowing what you need, because that's going to be the question. What is it that you need? How can we help?
The question has to do with resources, and I'll just mention a couple of resources that we found very important in the registry and institutions we've worked with. One is basically what you were alluding to, Nelson, is looking at what are the examples already out there? What's happened with them? How did they go about it? And that's the kind of thing we've been able to share as well. And also we have found, as you did, working with accrediting agencies is not only important in learning what they might share, but it's critical, it's crucial, so that you're taking the right steps along the way, that they'll be ready to endorse as you reach toward that partnership fulfillment.
Very good. That's really helpful. Move to another question. And this is an interesting question in terms of how it was phrased, but it was the following. Do you foresee more institutions being open to the idea of merging, or will ones in financial trouble stay in their sinking silos?
Well, let me jump in on that one, first of all, because I have a very direct answer to that. It depends on how soon institutions start looking at what the alternatives are. Correct. If you wait way too long until you don't have resources you can use, if you've started to use up way too much of your endowment, or you don't have within your regular budgeting enough play to start looking at what those alternatives are, to start going through a partnership process, then you may be too late and you lose too many alternatives. And that's when too many institutions look at only one possible, or really could say maybe two possibilities. One is closing or the other merging, instead of looking at all these other possibilities that we both have articulated along the way. So start early, start having those conversations within the board, and as guided by a good presidential leader within your staff as well.
Let me just add something. I worked with a school that was considering partnerships and mergers. One of the things that's critical is have your financial house in order. Make sure you understand what's happened over time. This school particularly had been in trouble over a 5-year period, had been generating deficits every year. They knew they were in trouble, but one of the things that partners will want to know is all the information you can provide relative to that institution in terms of enrollment and finance. So you really have to have your act together in terms of knowing what potential partners want to see. And they'll want to see a lot of things related to enrollment and to finance. That's absolutely critical.
So if you look at the slide that we had around operational assessment, they want to know a lot about your organizational structure. You already mentioned enrollment and finances, but also where do you stand with your state and again with your accrediting body? Are you in trouble? And then there's some litigation questions. You know, what's happened the past 5 years? What's underneath the pillow that we don't know about that we should know about? Those conversations, you have to be as transparent as possible as you move forward.
I would also say don't be afraid of the conversation. Don't be afraid to assess. Even if you're doing well, what's making you do well? But very often it's kind of, I know we're in trouble. I don't want to know. Yes, you do. And so I think it's really important that those conversations are had.
I note that the question specifically said, do you foresee more institutions being open to the idea of merging? And one thing that we've discovered is that if you can avoid and start soon enough, avoid the term merger, you will find more institutions open to looking at all these other alternatives. Because, and it's not just your board, but obviously faculty and others, they don't like to hear that term merge because they know what might lie ahead for them and for the institution. But if you can start the conversation and by looking at a whole set of alternatives short of merger, then I think there's an openness to starting earlier.
Very good. Thank you. Another question that's come up is, how will globalizing, diversifying, and virtually engagement of graduate education impact the future of colleges and universities?
I think let me just start by saying, it depends on how the institution defines its global outreach. Are they looking for students to come to their location, to their campus? Are they looking for exchange opportunities? For us, we've been able to have an international outreach because we are online, because we have that capability. But I would also say that look within your own community. There are international communities located in your own town, in your own city, that can bring that richness to you. We often overlook that. We always think of going outside of our locations to find that. But I think, yes, indeed, it will impact graduate education in terms of the world demands and what we offer and how we deliver it.
I like to take cues from the medical and the science community, not trying to be political, but if you look at the rush for a vaccine during COVID-19, you had all these great thought leaders throughout the world coming together to try to answer and to try to provide solutions. I think as we think about our institutions respectfully, just because we are based in one location, that doesn't mean we can't be the answer or a solution for an individual around the world. So we have to get outside our myopic view and think about what's the broader impact we could bring to throughout the country and throughout the world.
I think this question is important, whether it's related to partnerships or what individual institutions can do on their own. Obviously, in partnerships, they may be able to broaden that kind of appeal and outreach, as the question says, in diversifying and virtual engagement of graduate education. But in the registry, whether we've worked as through our registry advisory services or when we've sent an interim president or vice president, one kind or another, into institutions, we've seen amazing things begin to happen within the institution itself because they've started paying attention to what the needs of students are and the needs of the community and corporations and others, just like the folks at Union have done, and started to respond to those. Say, here's what we can do either online or by establishing new programs within the institution and on campus itself.
Very good. Okay, so the next question is one that I really like, which is, will stackable credentials play a larger role for private nonprofits going forward? And I'll just answer from my perspective, working with a number of institutions. Absolutely. The situation has changed. I know here in the Silicon Valley in California, credentials are becoming more important. It's what employers are looking for. That's what students are looking for. And so I think that it's something that is an opportunity. It's a challenge, but a real opportunity for schools to get a leg up. And I think there are examples, Union is one of them, of using alternative ways of getting education. And just remember, credentials can lead to regular degrees, bachelor's and master's degrees. And so it's all one part. And so if anything, the pandemic has taught us is to think differently about how we deliver higher education and differently about what the employers are wanting and what students want in terms of being eligible for opportunities in the corporate and private sectors. So, and I'll turn to the panel members.
Let me just say that since this is the panel is supposed to be addressed primarily to private institutions, this is also a great place where private institutions have a great deal of flexibility to respond. And to be sure, again, you want to work with accrediting agencies, you want to work with partners out there, you want to work with your corporate institutions that are nearby or in general, so you're meeting the needs through your credentialing process. But we have seen more and more institutions at various levels, undergraduate, graduate levels, offering credential opportunities. And it's also an easy way to get connected with, very directly connected with corporations or corporate partners, even nonprofit partners, and get them to give support to the programs that you're starting to implement as well. So yes, a good deal of flexibility in that regard, and some visions will pay off big dividends.
I would say that some of our more popular majors embed a credential or a certificate within the degree, or you have the option of adding. And I think that's where industry's going, employment enhancing your opportunities. So absolutely.
So the nimbleness of union is what allows us to offer stackable certificates and credentials. And not just so much to offer these credentials, but then have internal pathways within our institutions to apply those credentials and certificates to our academic programs. And then within those academic programs, then give students options if they want to continue on and earn an undergraduate or graduate degree. What we notice is that if you break it down by stackables and then show them the pathway, one, they're not concerned about cost per se because it's manageable. They can also have employers pay for those credentials if it aligns with their current career situation. And then finally, they have a better outlook in terms of just time to completion. And then we just engage them with a longer period of time so they really feel part of a community.
Very good. Okay, one of the last questions that we received was, is this session being recorded? And indeed it is. But I'd like to take this opportunity to allow the speakers to provide any concluding remarks that they might want to have on the topic of online and partnerships and mergers. Let me lead off by saying that I'm at a public university, Berkeley, and my career has been at major research universities that are public. I think major universities that are public are missing opportunities that are available to them to provide services to their students. I think the other thing that's important is, even though the title of this session was Challenge and Opportunities for Private Colleges, a number of mergers have occurred at public universities. Just recently, even today, there was an announcement in the state colleges of Pennsylvania where 3 schools were merging together and had received the approval of their accrediting agency. So it's not only private schools that are looking at this, these are public schools as well. And you could see in the university system in Georgia, that's also occurring in Vermont, that's also occurring. And so I think that we got to think broadly about this. And also the other thing I'd mention, being largely my professional career at public research universities, my interim and consulting career at private universities, is that there's no exception to having a public and a private institution consider partnerships, alliances, and mergers. I think Bill has talked about that, but that's something that is an opportunity for schools that are both public and private. And so I'll turn to the other panel members now.
I think that we now have the atmosphere and probably a better knowledge of each other, so that the private, public, private, corporate, that we're all a little more open to partnerships, regardless of the nature of them, whether it's academic or corporate or agency, and that is good. But I do think that the private institution does have that flexibility, nimbleness to respond to the market if we so choose to, because there are private institutions that may not want to do that. But I think for survival, especially of private institutions that are not state supported, I think partnerships are going to be the way of the future for sustainability.
Thank you.
Nelson, you want to say anything or?
Well, I want to be respectful, but sure, I'll go next. So I think what we have to remember is that we can no longer stay seated at the table and just watch from that ivory tower. Individuals are expecting us to do something and to partner. The world is about collaboration and partnership. These are no longer just nice to have agreements. These conversations are no longer just casual engagement pieces. In order to continue to thrive in this world, we need each other. We are connected with each other. That human experience now requires then systems to connect so that we could be able to provide solutions and answers to the world. So partnerships is great, and the private sector needs to be at the head of that table, because we know that's also part of our survival and to make sure our mission continues.
I would just like to stress again the importance of looking forward and starting early. We just have seen so many institutions that waited much too long to begin looking at all these different ideas and different alternatives. And to be sure, that can happen among public as well as private institutions. But we are quite aware that there are private institutions, particularly those that don't have large endowments, particularly those that are struggling with enrollment right now, depending on what part of the United States that they're located in. But I would emphasize, do not give up hope. Because if you do start early enough and start looking at the alternatives, there are wonderful ideas out there. There are other institutions you can find that are looking for kinds of partnerships to pursue. And so you may be doing something great, not just for yourself, but for higher education generally, and for other institutions that need the stimulus as well by looking at alternatives along the way. And it might be that you would simply stay in your own place and do great things while you're partnering with others. We've also worked with institutions in the registry where they've moved their campus as a part of an affiliation agreement in order to establish that exciting institution, but under a slightly different, on the same name, but affiliated with a different institution as well. So start early and don't give up hope. Oh, and by the way, one other thing I would say that I did put into the chat here, if somebody wants to follow up question, it's bill@registryinterim.com. I did the first one really too quickly, but it's the second one, bill@registryinterim.com. If you have any specific questions on some details that I'd mentioned, feel free to send me an email, and I'm sure that Nelson and Karen would be open to that as well.
Absolutely.
As would I. I'd like to thank all the speakers. It's been a very informative session, and I appreciate the attendees participating in the session, and want to thank each of the speakers for their wonderful presentations. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you all.